today's episode of the Retro Gamers Podcast, my friend Charlie returns after a long hiatus to co-host. We react to the new Video Game Hall of Fame inductees, and we celebrate the 45th anniversary of Pac-Man. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode 412. Anthony here, and this week I'm joined by my good friend Charlie. Charlie, welcome back to the show.
Long time no see. I think the last time I was here was for the 400th, and the last time I actually sat down and did a full episode was the Game Boy Advance coming to the Switch. So it's been a while. So you need to fix that and add me into rotation a little more.
Well, you know what? When I was looking back and seeing that the last time you co-hosted was all the way back in episode 316, like you said about the Game Boy Online. And I wasn't even on the show. You were actually filling in for me that week. So it's been a really long time since the two of us have sat down.
Yeah, I think this is only the second time it's just you and me. Last time was when we did the music, when we did the video game music.
That's right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So no,
that was a fun episode too.
I had a blast with that episode. I don't know the number of that episode, but that was definitely a lot a lot of fun. Yeah. Yes. I agree 100%. We can't let that much time go in between. So
it's between 0 and 316.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I think, people can figure it out, right?
Yeah. But anyway, that's just a plug to make them go back and listen to the old episodes.
Exactly, and they're all available, on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can go search Charlie out and see if you can track him down on some early episodes.
Sounds like the name of a movie,
right? Search Charlie out.
Yeah.
Yeah, soon to be coming from A24, starring Brad Pitt and George Clooney.
No, I'd have to be someone wider than that. So, and Chris Farley's not available. Neither is John Candy. So, I don't even know. Maybe that Brett guy who takes his shirt off all the time, that comedian, he'd be perfect.
Oh no, what about David Harbour?
I don't know who that is.
He's the one he's on Stranger Things. He plays Red Guardian in Thunderbolts. Nothing. Marvel. No. Well, I'm sorry. David Harbour would be a good Charlie. Let's just say that. So look him up after we're done recording the show.
Oh yeah. Also, the last time you saw me, I don't think I had the beard. Did I?
No. You are beardy. I want to say again though, you've had a.
Oh yeah, when the Rangers were in the playoffs, which we all know, we won't need to discuss that this year. Fired.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So now you just grew the beard for the heck of it. So
yeah, fired. Well, when the daughter and the girlfriend say to grow it, you kind of. Yeah. Speak of the devil, she just messaged me. The girlfriend, not the daughter.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
But happy to have you back on. We're not going to let as much time go by as it's done in the past. But
it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And obviously we're going to get into our topic of discussion a little bit later. If you see Charlie's background, you might be able to guess what that's going to be. But before we get there, Charlie, what have you been playing lately since
if anything, I've been watching Mary play a lot of games. So, I mean, she's all over the place with what she's playing. I really haven't been playing too much because since the last time I got a new job. So, it actually works out better for me and my daughter. I bought the new the Mario versus Donkey Kong, the Switch version.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. And I'm enjoying it. So I'm going through that a little bit. I
cool.
really haven't bought any new games besides that. I'm just sticking back to the old classics because, it's just comforting. And, I'll play the Nintendo Online with some of my friends, especially Chris, who you met. We all met during episode 400.
Yes, we did.
So, yeah, that's been pretty much it. You know how it is. You buy the things, you want to play the things, but then by the time you're done with work, you're too exhausted to do the things. So I just hang out on the couch with my dog, watching MASH or Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, you know what? But I think it's great that Mary is getting is playing the retro games. You're passing it on to the next generation, which is always a good thing. My next generation here are cats, so I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, and she's been beating a bunch of the older Pokemon games.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Pokemon's one of those. I've said it on the show a number of times. It's one of those franchises I never got into.
And neither did I.
Yeah.
Like a good teenager on the day off, she's currently upstairs sleeping, and it's 9:47 in the morning.
Well, you know what? And that's what kids should do.
Right? Well, background. On Saturday we're recording on a Monday. Saturday night, we went down to Atlantic City because she asked to go see Alice Cooper. So we went to go see Alice Cooper. She had a blast. Yesterday on our way through, we stopped in Philly, grabbed a couple of cheesesteaks at Jim's, Fourth and South, and then by the time we got home, we were just done with people. So,
All right. Well, that's fair, but that sounds like a good time. And talk about going retro, Alice Cooper. They had it
oh
right
yeah, it was a
there.
good show. I mean, he was only on for a little over an hour, but still, I mean, the snake, Jake the Snake came out. He was playing with the snake and whatnot. He got
Yes.
his the guillotine thing. He did that also. So,
All
no,
right.
it was pretty cool.
All right. Very cool. Well, I'm glad that you and Mary had a good time uh at the concert and in Atlantic City, hopefully. And let's start jumping into it. Now, before we
Yeah,
get to our topic today, I got a few bits of retro news that I want to go through. And the first bit, there were a few. I was actually looking at things that might be a little Charlie centric in the news, actually. So things that you might be interested in hearing. The first one that I found, and I thought this was actually kind of cool. Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, right?
yes.
One of the best Super Mario games I think out there. Just recently released by Warner Music Group. We have a soundtrack release
Hmm.
for Super Mario World on vinyl,
Ooh.
which is interesting because we don't see Nintendo doing that a lot. And not only that, Nintendo didn't distribute it. It's being done by Warner Music
Yeah.
Japan. And it's the original 1991 soundtrack from the game. The artwork on the cover is straight off of the Japanese release
Oh,
of
nice.
Super
So,
Mario
so
World.
if you go to Japan, oh wait, no, you're not the one going to. No, Chris is going to Japan later this year. Never mind. I'll ask him to grab
I was just
it.
gonna say, have him grab you a copy. There may be a trip or two to Japan in my
I'm
future.
so
So
used to you being the one going to Japan. So,
yeah. Well, I actually might be going there again. So if I do, I'll keep an eye out for it. I'm really
uh,
hoping Tower Records is still by the hotel that I normally stay at there because I'll
that
just
means,
swing right over.
yeah, he's going in July. So,
Oh, nice. All right. Well, if he beats me there, then get yourself a copy.
okay,
Super
that'll be
Mario
a
World
great
on vinyl.
picture.
Yes, it would be. And then here's another bit that I thought was interesting because I actually learned something because the Wii U, the much
Yeah,
maligned Wii U, that did not do well in terms of sales, but what led us to the Nintendo Switch, which turned out to be obviously now
phenomenal.
the best selling console of all time officially. It has beaten out the PlayStation 2. But when the Wii U came out, what I didn't realize is that the gamepad that used to be
Mhm.
able to take off and play without using the television. If your gamepad broke here in the US, you couldn't get a replacement for it. You had to buy a brand new Wii U. Like they didn't sell it separately.
Insane.
I didn't realize in Japan though they did sell the gamepad separately. So if your Japanese version of the Wii U broke, you could just replace the gamepad. Um, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is now a an online, there's so many modders out there doing things and whatnot.
Yeah.
This modder, his name is Matt KC, or developer Matt KC. He is creating an open source Wii U Gamepad emulator. So you can use your Steam Deck, your smartphone, Apple or Android, your Raspberry Pi, your Linux, or your Nintendo Switch as a second screen controller for your actual Wii U.
See how long it is before Nintendo stops that one.
Well, I mean, it's open source. It's just
Okay.
open source. It's not he's not making any money off of it.
Hmm.
He's gonna release the code online and you're gonna be able to just download it. And now you have a backup for anybody who still uses a Wii U. You have a backup for your gamepad if your gamepad breaks, because even now, like if your gamepad breaks, it's like
You done.
go
Yeah.
yeah, or good
Yeah.
luck finding.
I never had a Wii or a Wii U. I kind of missed that stuff.
Hmm.
Hindsight being 2020, I kick myself in the for not doing because I've gone to friends' places and I played it all the time. But once I knew the Switch was coming out,
Hmm.
poof. Especially because I have a hard time with a lot of the newer games
Hmm.
because I can't handle open world games. Kind of like in the same
Oh
sense you
yeah.
can in the way you can't handle the first person shooter games.
Yep.
My problem is the way my brain works is okay. Here's your mission. Go to it. A to B. That's it. I can't do like all the side quests, open world with the
Mm.
goalposts keep moving. So like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, the newer Zeldas, I can't do that. Odyssey I can't do because of that layout. But
Oh,
the Super
interesting.
Mario Wonder, I'm okay with. I think it's a little too easy, but that's a future episode.
Okay. Well, yeah, we could write game difficulty.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say with Super Mario Odyssey though, I didn't necessarily. I mean, it didn't feel like open world to me only because like
yeah.
you needed to collect X number of moons, and then
Mhm.
once you collected X number of moons, you moved on. You didn't need to get all
Yeah,
of them. You just needed to get the ones you needed to move on, and then eventually you fight Bowser at the end.
yeah.
So,
It's just just the way my
but I
brain
get
is.
it. No, no,
Yeah,
no. I absolutely get it. Like, for me, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were just so monumental.
yeah.
And now
Oh, and Mary
Nintendo,
beat them both, by the way. I don't know if I told you that.
oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, I think Nintendo has even said with those games like that they don't plan on ever going back to like the way Zelda used to run now
Uh,
that systems can do this. Although
yeah,
obviously they still go back and play like, Echoes of Wisdom. I don't know if you
yeah.
played Echoes of Wisdom.
No, no, no. Mary's played that one also. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of it just because of the way the story is, but that's just me personally. Mary likes
Mm.
it. For
Yeah.
me, personally, I think Zelda should be wielding a sword and a shield the whole time.
You know what? I agree. I played through the game and I thought the same thing. I was like, you know what?
Yeah,
I like the way that they tried to bring in like a little bit of a magic element to give her something different. I
yeah.
was like, but yeah, I'd like to me, I think her picking up the sword and the shield and taking over for Link, I think would have been awesome.
Oh yeah,
So,
and the whole emphasize, the whole girl power thing, for lack of a better term,
mhm.
because you've met Mary. Need I say more?
No, no, you do you do not need to.
Yeah,
And I fully support that as well. So, but anyway, getting back to the Wii U. So for those
yeah.
of you out there, if you have a Wii U and your gamepad either goes belly up or is already belly up, there may be a solution for you in the near future. All right. And then the next bit of news, I want to bring this up because I know you might be interested in this. You are a big Game Boy fan,
Yes.
right? You love your handhelds. Definitely not my strong suit. Totally
No one's
yours.
perfect,
No, no, you know what? I will be the first one to admit that I am not
but
perfect.
at least we agree on the Virtual Boy.
We do agree on the virtual, but it's funny. I took out my VB Suck shirt and I was like, maybe I'll wear it today because you're here, but I think
No, we
we
retired it. Remember,
we yes, we
we
retired
retired
it.
it.
We have matured.
I don't know about that.
Well,
Maybe mellowed out in our older age.
we've mellowed out. Middle age
Yeah.
has hit us both. That's it.
Yes.
We're mellow.
Yeah.
But
It's
what
all
I want to
downhill from here, and it's weird being the same age as old people.
it, don't get me started.
Just because you're older.
Don't get me started.
I don't know that 50's coming up close.
You know what? I should just go pick out my plot now. So getting back to Game Boy. So there's a company called 90 Media, N-I-N or Ninty Media, Ninty. I don't know if they say it 90 or Ninty, whatever it is. But they have just recently released a game. It's called the Game Book Advance. It is a hardcover book that covers the library of the Game Boy Advance. And then when
Ooh.
I did a little more digging into this, they have also done one. They did a Game Boy version and they did a Game Boy Color version. So there's a Game Book Color, and a Game Book Advance book by this company, 90 Media or Ninty, however they want to say it. The book retails for 49 US dollars. And like I said, hardcover book delves into the history of the Game Boy Advance. It's got artwork from all of the games. It's got the cartridges and everything like that. It looks really, really cool. So for
Hmm.
somebody who loves the Game Boy, this might be something for you to look into.
I think that's something you should you should post that link on your various social media websites. This way, our viewers and listeners would be able to access a copy of it.
Well, the link will be in the comments section of this episode
There you
because
go.
that's where they go.
There we go.
So yeah, so anybody interested in a book like that, I have a number of books from Nintendo, most of which are Mario and Zelda related. But anybody interested in that can check it out on 90media.net, and you can see in our comments, you can see the link. So there's that. And then last but not least, last bit of news. A couple of episodes ago, I did a rundown with my friend John of the World Video Game Hall of Fame inductees for 2025. And they always have like 12, about a dozen on the
Mm.
list. And they announced last month the winners, the official inductees into the 2025 World Video Game Hall of Fame.
Wait, should I do the
This
drum roll now since I did it a little premature?
Yeah, you can do it now. We got one too. Our games for this year are Defender,
Mm,
arcade game Defender. I was a big fan of Defender.
I couldn't get the hang of it.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a super popular game when it came out. It came out in October 1980, way back when. So it is almost 45 years old, which is crazy. And then I mostly remember playing it on the Atari 2600 because
Yeah,
I
me
had a
too.
copy of it. I think I have maybe three or four
And
copies.
there's actually a version of it for the Game Boy Advance also,
Oh,
where you can
nice.
play both the retro version and well they're both retro now, but
Yep.
the Atari version and one with updated graphics. And even then, I still had a hard time, getting the gameplay down.
All right. Well, it's understandable. Not every game works for everybody.
I know.
Trust me, I have a list of games that don't work well for me.
Yeah, so do I.
But but Defender is now in the World Video Game Hall of Fame, which is nice. And then the other ones include they this one's great. The Tamagotchi has now been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I thought, you know what? At
Yeah,
first I was kind of like, huh? And then I'm like, yeah,
it
I see
is.
it.
It can be considered a video game. It's a kind of more of a pocket video game, but we are all basically living Tamagotchis trying to make it through.
More or
But
less.
you remember how big the craze was back when it came out in the late '90s, as
Mhm.
opposed to the late 1900s, which is now the same thing. So as we all
I
turn to dust on this episode,
I don't want to hear that. I
I
hate it
know
when people say that.
your niece likes to remind me of that. But yeah,
Yes,
I
the
mean,
late
it was such a
1900s.
huge craze. I didn't get into it, but everyone was walking around with the Tamagotchis. Actually, Mary had one a couple of years ago also.
Mhm.
So
I had
it definitely deserves a place in the Hall of Fame because it made such a huge pop culture impact in the late '90s.
Yeah, it was huge. And I'll go back a little bit. It was actually midnight. It was 1995 when it came out. And you
Yeah.
couldn't find these things anywhere.
No,
They
you couldn't.
sold out like gangbusters.
Yeah.
I had one. I think I maybe played it for a week. And I just let my Tamagotchi die. I'm like, I can't give this thing all like my attention all day.
No,
It's
you
like,
can't. And I think
yeah,
I played one a couple of times. I actually kept it alive for a week.
yeah,
So
that's what I did. I played about a week and then I was like, you know what? I'm good.
give
Uh,
me Oregon Trail any day.
oh, I love Oregon Trail. Also,
I did not die of dysentery, and I actually did beat it at the expo last year.
nice, very nice. I beat it
Yeah,
recently too. I played through it just on my
yeah.
computer.
And Mary beat it the first time she ever played it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, so Tamagotchi. And then the other two games that came in that were inducted was Quake, which was basically a Doom. I don't want to say a Doom sequel, but like what Doom
Doom
built,
like
Quake built off of.
yeah.
And
Doom
so
was kind of an inspiration, for lack of a better term.
yeah, exactly.
And
And they had
Doom inspired so many other games. Is Doom in the Hall of Fame yet or no?
I believe it is, yeah.
I'll take a look while you're spieling.
Yeah, Spiel. Well, Spiel, yes.
And
So
it's nice having this setup now. Having multiple screens.
that isn't it the best thing? It really is. Like,
Yeah.
especially when we're doing stuff like this.
Yeah, we probably
So
should have warned everybody that we're going to go off on tangents like this the whole time because it's also a little bit of a potpourri episode.
yeah. Well, I like to let our conversations go wherever they go anyway. Like we have our topics,
Yeah,
and then we'll see what
actually,
else comes
Doom
up.
celebrates 10 years in the Hall of Fame. It was inducted in 2015. It was
There
one
you
of the
go.
original six inductees alongside Pong, Pac-Man,
Hmm.
uh, Super Mario, Tetris, and World of Warcraft.
There you go.
Yep.
So yeah, I knew it was in the Hall of Fame. I just wasn't sure like what year. I didn't realize it was the first year inductee, which is kind of
Yeah.
awesome. And then the last game that got into the Hall of Fame this year, GoldenEye 007 for the N64. I mean,
Rightfully so, because it is one of the most popular N64 games of all time. I've only played it a couple of times because I never had an N64, but the pop culture, not references, impact. I mean, for Christ's
yes.
sake, Jimmy Fallon and Pierce Brosnan played it on late night one night. I think it was with Jimmy Fallon. I don't remember. Yeah,
Yeah, Jimmy Fallon was notorious for playing video games on his show.
yeah,
So I wouldn't be surprised if it was him, but I think I remember seeing that clip. of Pierce
Yeah,
Brosnan playing it because he had no idea what to do.
yeah,
And it was great. But yeah, GoldenEye, I had an N64. I still have an N64, but I never owned GoldenEye because it was a first person shooter and I just couldn't do it. It
yeah.
just the headaches, man. I remember actually when I bought the original South Park game for N64.
Hmm.
And I didn't do my research properly. I had no idea it was the first person. And I was like, oh, I just wasted like $60 or
Yeah,
$70 or whatever it was at the time because Nintendo 64 games were expensive.
yeah. And people, it's funny how people are complaining about the price of the Switch 2 games
Uh-huh.
because if you factor in inflation to what we paid for games back in the day, our games are more expensive.
Hmm. Oh no.
Yeah,
If you bought a game like even if you bought a game in 1990 for like $50, like today that would be like 200
yeah, like 150, at least
or
150.
150, 200. Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So yeah, so prices for games haven't gone up that much.
no,
And back then, some N64 games were $80, were 90.
yeah.
Like I think Ocarina of Time was $80.
Mhm.
So, so when Nintendo announced the price increase, I know a lot of people were unhappy with it, but it's not out of the realm of,
No, it's not.
video game history.
Yeah,
It just stinks because we've had that $60 price point for so long.
yeah.
So,
I mean, so does the lack of compatibility, but that's another story.
oh
That's
yeah,
another
no,
episode.
I wasn't happy when I heard that either.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately. But yeah, so those are our four inductees into the Video Game Hall of Fame, class of 2025. Defender, Tamagotchi, Quake, GoldenEye. Congratulations to the four of them. And that's what I have for Retro News this week. The Retro Gamers Podcast is brought to you by Old School Gamer Magazine. Sign up for as little as $20 per year for 6 issues that include feature articles, interviews with retro programmers, new and old product reviews, and more. If you look carefully, you'll even see an article or two penned by yours truly. You can head over to oldschoolgamermagazine.com/retrogamerspodcast and sign up so they know where you heard about it. Old School Gamer is dedicated to you, the old school retro gamers from the arcades to your home. Let's move on. Let's get to the heart of this episode. If you haven't figured it out by now, it is a Pac-Man specific episode. It only seemed fitting as a retro video game podcast to celebrate the 45th retro birthday of Pac-Man. And we're going to dedicate the rest of the episode to Pac-Man himself.
Yeah, we just won't. We'll just ignore the 2600 version of it because that doesn't exist.
But you know what? The 2600 version does have its place in Pac-Man history.
It
So
does, and I'm actually wearing the Atari shirt today. So
very nice. And I actually have on my I did about 3 years ago. This was on the West Coast. They were doing an awesome 80s run.
hmm
And it was only it was a 5K, so I was perfectly happy to
yeah.
to
I mean,
do it
between all
because
the references we made already and my background picture and your T-shirt, if someone
yeah,
didn't figure it out already, we can't help
exactly.
them.
But I just wanted, yeah, so I wore that t-shirt and I actually have the medal that they gave out. If you look at the medal they gave out, it's really
Oh, that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, and the Pac-Man moves around. You
That's
can push him
awesome.
around to the other side of the board, which is really cool.
Yeah,
So, um, but yeah, so Pac-Man turned 45 this year. Huge, huge milestone for a character, a video game that is known by probably almost everybody in the world.
yeah. I mean, where do we even start? It's a very addicting game
Yes.
to begin with, and how fast the difficulty increases was not something you saw at the time. I still can't get past the fifth board, and I've been playing it for over 35 years.
Hmm.
And then all the things that came out of it, between the cartoon, the Saturday morning cartoon, all the different variations of the game that came out of it. I mean, I had
Hmm.
the Pac-Man, the compilation on the Game Boy Advance. I forget what the name of it is. I mean, I can go inside and grab it, and it actually was like one of the options was a 3D version of Pac-Man. Right up to Pac-Man 99
Yep.
on the Switch, and Mary liked playing that also. So it was an iconic game, and it's one of those games that helped jumpstart the whole video game craze in the 80s.
Yep. You 100% correct all across the board there. I think that actually on May 22nd, which was the official birthday of
Yeah,
Pac-Man, May 22nd, 1980, Pac-Man was originally released. This past May 22nd, I did a live stream of the Pac-Man library, or just some of the games from the Pac-Man library, just to kind of give an idea of the breadth of it. But yeah, I mean, the Pac-Man craze, or the Pac-Man popularity has
Pac-Man
never.
Fever, that's what it was, because it was a, I don't know
Pac-Man
if you
Fever.
remember the record that came out, Pac-Man
Yes,
Fever and the
I
song.
do. I do
I think
remember
my
this.
mom still has it. And my mom loved playing Pac-Man on the Nintendo.
Well, and you know what's funny? I go, that was one of the original reasons why Pac-Man was created, because they were looking for a game that would appeal to women, because at the
Mhm.
time arcades were all dominated by men. So they
Yep.
wanted to cater to a female audience to obviously get that revenue.
Yeah, and it worked.
It definitely worked. In terms of compilation though, like you had mentioned you had it on the Game Boy Advance. Have you bought the Pac-Man Museum that's available on Switch and PlayStation?
No, no, I haven't yet. I mean, I'm not that big into it where it's something like that. You know, it's one of those things where, hey, I'm bored. Let me go a couple of rounds and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah.
if they would have released a handheld version like they did for the Super Mario and the Legend of Zelda, you know, the Game and Watch, I'd probably pick one up because it'd be something nice to do while I'm on a train.
Oh, okay. That
You know,
makes
little
sense.
things like that. You know.
Well, it's about, yeah, the Pac-Man Museum is actually pretty good. It's got 14, I think 14 different Pac-Man games on it. So it's
Mhm.
really cool, including the Championship Edition, which is great. So yeah, it just something to toss out there. But what we're gonna do is, like Charlie said earlier, we're gonna kind of go back and forth. We got pretty much a bit of a retro spotlight on Pac-Man. So we're gonna go through the history. We'll talk about our experiences, as we've already started to do. So just to go back to the very, very beginning. Pac-Man was developed by Namco. The designer of the game, whose name I'll never forget, Toru Iwatani. He was the designer of the game. He actually designed a couple of games previously before this. One was GB. GB was his first game that he designed, and again, this was a game that was designed specifically to appeal towards women, and that's the reason why the direction they went in was to have cuter looking characters, more a little bit more colorful, because they thought that would actually bring women to the arcade to
Yeah,
play a game like that.
and you know the the younger listeners should realize, you know, that's just the way it was back then. It's not,
Hmm.
you know, it wasn't always the right thing. You know,
Yep.
as we've seen in the future. Perfect Exhibit A, my daughter upstairs being the gamer that she is, but it was you know, it was a toe dip into the pool to a bigger market, and you know, so the subsequent versions on the Atari got better, and then eventually, you know, the Nintendo version is phenomenal, and that's where I believe that's where this background is from, the Nintendo version.
Yeah, that does look like the Nintendo version. Absolutely. But and again, to rewind back to the original intent, as you said, it was to, like we said, to appeal toward women. They weren't expecting the game to be ridiculously successful, because they were gearing it towards a new demo, right?
Yeah,
A new demo. They didn't think this was going to catch on with men. And so they were really surprised when it became as successful as it did. And before we get to that, just to go back really quickly with Toru Iwatani, um, he worked on a couple of Pac-Man games. He worked on Pac-Man, he worked on Super Pac-Man, but then he produced and directed a whole bunch of other games, like games you would know, like Rally X,
mm-hmm.
Galaga, Pole Position, Ridge Racer, Time
Oh, I love
Crisis.
Galaga.
Galaga is such a great game.
Yeah,
So, this guy was a big influence in video games in the 80s and early 90s, which is really cool. And the Pac-Man design, like the actual character, everybody knows, or at least the general thinking behind them is the inspiration came from a pizza with a slice missing, and that's where the
which I think
idea
I
of
might have
Pac-Man.
for dinner tonight.
There you go. I had pizza like 4 days in a row last week for some odd
Oof,
reason.
yeah, that's a lot.
It just happened that way.
Yeah,
I don't know how
I
that
get it.
happened, but it did. But anyway, the original inspiration was talked about as a pizza with the slice missing. But when you talk in an interview with Toru Iwatani, he actually said that the design was built off of the Japanese character for mouth, which is called kuchi in Japanese. And if you look at the character, it's kind of like a square with little legs, almost looks like a TV,
Hmm.
like an old school TV. And he basically said he just rounded out, He rounded it out into a circle, and then obviously we got the mouth. Um, and that was so those two things kind of were the impetus for the Pac-Man design. And then for the name of the game, and I'm sure you know this, and a lot of people know this, in Japan, it was not called Pac-Man, it was called Puck-Man.
Puckman. Leave it to the two
Puck-Man.
hockey guys to remember that.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't forget Puck-Man.
No.
And Puck-Man came from the phrase in Japanese, paku paku tabaru, which means to eat something up, to gobble something up. It's the mouth movement up and down.
Hmm.
And that's where they came up with Puck-Man. Now, why didn't we get the name Puck-Man in the United States or in North America?
Probably got
Yeah.
lost in translation like Donkey Kong.
Oh, no, 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 no. This was a
Oh,
very specific strategic move to change it because people in North America were afraid that the people who go to arcades at the time who were very young were gonna
replace the
change,
P with an F.
replace the P with an F. So because of that concern, Puckman in North America became Pac-Man, and the rest is history
To be
with
fair,
the
how many
game.
times have we replaced that P with the F when playing games and losing or dying?
I do it every day.
Yeah, every
Every,
day.
yes, every pucking day.
Oh, no, it's funny because Mary, like when she gets frustrated, she'll want to say it. She'll look at me, Dad, can I say it? Okay, and then she'll just go off on a tirade, and it's, but at least she has the respect to ask first.
I was
So
just gonna say, I think it's great that she gets to ask, and I think it's great that you allow her to do it, and then she gets it all out of her system, right? A big tirade, and it's like, boom, okay, I'm good.
yep, she's definitely her parents.
Nice. And that that's awesome. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so that's that was all the background of like the actual creation of it. And then what you were talking about before we get to the Atari 2600. Um, in terms of the characters themselves, we know about Pac-Man, who is the eater, and then we got ghosts,
Oh wait,
right?
let's see if I can name them all off memory.
Hit me with the ghosts.
Inky, Pinky, Blinky, Clyde.
Yes.
Kabla!
Can you do it by now? Can you tell me the color?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
Pinky is pink,
I
obviously.
was just gonna say, obviously, no, yeah, Pinky is pink,
So I got 1 out of 4.
Blinky is red,
Uh-huh.
Inky is blue, Clyde is orange. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, again, with Tommy in an interview said that the reason why he chose the ghosts was he was actually inspired by Casper the Friendly Ghost and a
Mhm.
manga series called Obaki no Kutaro. I
And
don't know
each
if
and each ghost had a specific purpose and a specific behavior.
yes.
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so the Blinky, the red ghost,
Mhm.
always goes straight for Pac-Man. He's always just on his tail. That is his purpose. Pinky and Inky, what they do, their goal is to get in front of Pac-Man and then ambush him from behind. So whenever you get sandwiched between ghosts,
Yeah.
it's normally going to be between Blinky, the red one, and
Uh,
either Pinky or Inky. They'll get in between you, and that's what takes you out. So if you
yeah.
when you're playing the game, you may get past level 5 knowing these strategies. Because if you get in the
Maybe.
game, do your best not to get stuck in between them on either side, because that's
Yeah.
usually when they close in.
Well,
And
usually what
then
I'll do is I'll draw them to where the power pellets are and then go after them.
And that's what I do too.
Yeah.
And then Clyde, the orange one, he switches between two motions. He's either chasing Pac-Man or running away from him. So he does both purposes. And again, it's to create like a confusion of is he coming after you this time or running away? I don't know which way to go. And
Or
then
Clyde the bipolar ghost.
yeah, Clyde the bipolar ghost, coming to
That should be a good.
yeah,
That sounds like a good name of a cartoon.
coming to Netflix 2027.
Yes. I don't
So
know.
those
You have the hooks for that. You make that happen.
I'll work on it.
Make it so.
I will. And then so then those are the ghosts. And then in terms of the power pellets, one of the discussions about the power pellets that I read, and I don't know how accurate it is the inspiration for those came from Popeye. When Popeye eats his spinach and becomes powerful and stuff, the idea eat the power pellet, become powerful, and you can eat the
Well,
ghosts.
you kind of need some sort of um, power pellet or power up for the game because otherwise it would be impossible, and it just wouldn't be a success.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
as you increase on the boards and keep going higher, you know, okay, you get a power pellet for half a second, poof, done.
Exactly. Well, actually, when you get to a certain board, the power pellets don't work at all.
Oh, I've
You
never
probably
been that far, so
I have gotten that far before where they just don't work, and you're basically done at that point, unless you're a pro at it, because obviously there have been people who have been able to figure out strategies to the game
yeah.
and obviously get all the way to the kill screen.
256.
Level 256 brings up the kill screen in the game, and it wasn't designed to have a kill screen. The game was originally designed to go endlessly, but there's obviously a coding issue that happens when you get to level 256. It's called an integer overflow. I
Mm.
don't know how to explain what happens with it, but essentially the numbers go wrong. The game dies at level 256. So if you're lucky to get that far, more power to you. So very few people have been able to reach that milestone. The first one, of course, being for those in the video game industry who know him, Billy Mitchell was the first person to achieve a perfect score in Pac-Man back in 1999. Billy Mitchell is well known for the documentary King of Kong because he also had the record for Donkey Kong at the time. And the documentary is actually really interesting because they go back and forth between Billy Mitchell and another person whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. But there was always some controversy surrounding Billy Mitchell, and in fact, in 2018, he lost his title. Guinness actually they actually took the title away from him, and then they reinstated it a couple of years later. So again, that's a whole other story. But Billy Mitchell is very tied to Pac-Man because he had achieved this feat. Going back to the release of Pac-Man, you had touched on the Atari portion of it earlier, but just a general stat for this, which is mind-blowing. And these are the only stats I found online from 2016. So these stats are 9 years old. But as of 2016, Pac-Man was responsible for selling over 43 million units and over $14 billion in revenue, which
I
is,
believe it. Think about all the quarters that were eaten at the arcades.
yeah, exactly. It's just crazy. But it's just
And
crazy.
yeah.
$14 billion from one
And
game.
even nowadays, when you go to the arcades, since the arcades are finally making a comeback,
Yes,
Pac-Man's
they
still
are.
one of those games where you usually see a line for.
Yeah. And if you check out, actually, if you check out episode 411, the previous episode I did that dropped after Memorial Day, I was at the Silver Ball Retro Arcade talking to their senior tech, and we were going through it, and Pac-Man was definitely one of my stops there.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
we show
you went to Silver Ball in Jersey, down? No,
in
that's
Asbury Park, New Jersey. Yeah.
oh man,
Yep.
that's on my list of places to go because I love pinball machines.
Well, then you definitely want to, if you did not watch episode 411, I highly
Not yet.
recommend you watch it. You'll
I'm
you'll enjoy
behind,
it.
so you might have to kick me off the show now.
That's okay, but that's one to watch on YouTube. You're gonna want to actually see what Silverball has. It's really
Okay.
awesome. So getting back to Pac-Man. So when it was released, when the game actually came out in 1980, like I said originally, they thought it was going to be a flop. In fact, when they went to a convention to sell it to a developer, they first approached Atari to distribute it, and Atari passed
Mm.
because they didn't think it was going to work. And that
Atari making a mistake? Say it ain't so.
Oh yeah, one of
Just looking
many in
at
the
you,
80s,
ET.
right? One of many in the 80s. But Atari passed on it, and Midway decided to release it. And they actually picked up that and Rally X at the same time. And Rally X wound up being successful as well. But what they thought was going to be, just a regular arcade release was insanely successful. It dethroned Space Invaders as the highest grossing game in 1980. Space Invaders was the leading game in for 2 years, 78 and 79. By 1981, it was the fourth highest grossing game in Japan, which is nuts. And then in the United States, when it got here in 1980, it was earning $8 million a week
It's a
in
lot of quarters.
1980. It's a lot of quarters. 100,000 units sold. It made over $1 billion in revenue in 1980, which surpassed the feat achieved by Star Wars the movie, which is just crazy when you think
Whose
about
birthday
that.
was anniversary was yesterday, I believe, the 25th.
Was 25th.
I think it's May 25th.
Oh, May 25th. I was like 20. I thought you meant 25th
No,
year. I'm like, we're way past that.
no, 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 no.
That's coming up on 50.
So are you.
Hey. Uh, so yeah, so ridiculously successful. And you've heard us say that a few times. And now when I wanted to get to your Atari comment, which you said, I don't know, 10 minutes ago or so. But it was released on the Atari 2600. It's notorious for how bad it is, right?
Yeah,
However, it is the best-selling game of the Atari 2600. It sold 8 million copies, even though
that
it was
makes sense.
terrible. Yeah.
It makes sense because it was all look at all the Atari games that were hyped up.
Yep. Well, also when you
And part of it also is it did bring the convenience of being able to play it at home without having to put actual clothes on.
and well, aside from the end part of that, that's exactly the
Yeah,
point. Like
yeah,
this was the opportunity to have one of the best games at the time,
at the time, yeah,
yeah, in your home. Of course, obviously the port of it was just beyond terrible.
yeah. I mean, it's not as bad as ET, but still,
No,
Pac
it's
he couldn't. The board was small,
mhm.
and Pac-Man, he didn't turn direction like that. He would just be no matter what facing either left or right,
Yep,
even when going up or down the y-axis.
yep.
But the problem with Atari, which has been mentioned numerous times, is they rushed a lot to put out games. And okay, we can understand it was an infantile system,
Hmm.
didn't have the technology that they had now, but Atari never evolved in the way like Nintendo did, even just on the NES, where the
Yeah.
graphics evolved. Perfect example: Mario, Mario 2, Mario 3, or even in the Mega Man series. Atari was too focused on getting the consoles out that there was really no quality assurance or quality control done. And that's how you end up with thousands of cartridges buried in the Arizona desert.
Yeah, very true. I also think it was the speed of creating games. Like
Yeah.
they weren't interested in taking their time. They were
Yeah.
just
They
like,
just want to get it out there and make money.
yeah, we want to get it out there. We want to make money, do it fast. And you mentioned ET. ET was notorious for that because the developer of the game actually said, or the designer of the game said, he was given like 5 weeks
Yeah.
to make a game.
And that's one
And
thing I can understand now, being that I work in a product for a project management company. You can't do that stuff fast.
no,
You have to take your time. You have to develop it.
yeah.
So no, but Pac-Man recovered. Atari eventually recovered.
Everybody happened to recover out of that one. I don't know how, but yeah, Atari's doing really well today in
Yeah.
2025. They're doing really, really well today. I even have the the Atari 2600 what was it, the Plus?
Mhm.
Whatever it was that came out. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Atari VCS. I bought it when it was
Yeah.
on sale. So I actually have one now. I can honestly say I only turned it on twice,
Yeah.
but it's
I
part of the
haven't bothered
collection.
because I know it's just going to sit there and collect dust.
Yeah, well, the collector in me wants it, so now I
Yeah.
I I have it in my collection. I'm very happy with it, and I actually just pre-ordered the Atari 2600 or the Atari module for my Polymega. So I'm
Hmm.
just going to be able to dump all my Atari games onto my Polymega and add it to
Nice.
my collection on there, which would be cool.
Yeah. And
Uh,
it's actually surprisingly easy to get Atari cartridges anymore. The games are all over the place.
they really are.
Trying to get the box, which is your thing,
Hmm.
that's a little bit more difficult.
There's a little bit of a challenge with that for
Yeah.
sure. But you can still find them. They're out
Yeah.
there. They're definitely out there, not just buried in the desert.
No, not just buried in the desert.
But getting back to Pac-Man, so we talked about the 2600 version selling 8 million copies.
Mm.
Coleco released in 1982 the little tabletop version of Pac-Man. Remember those
Yes.
little ones?
Yes.
Yep, good,
Yeah. No, I was going to say, because I know one of the medics I used to work with had a tabletop Pac-Man.
nice.
And actually, in some of the consoles also, it was Pac-Man and Galaga. You were able to choose.
Yes, I remember that. But that little tabletop one actually sold 1.5 million units, which is
Mm.
pretty awesome. And then I actually had a friend, one of my closest friends actually when I was a kid. He had the table one.
Oh, that's what I was talking about, the table,
Yeah,
not the
that's
tabletop one.
no, no, no. Yeah, the
Yeah, the
tabletop I'm
actual
talking about
table
is
where
like
you
that
look
that little
down and
game.
you're playing
Yeah,
like
the
this.
tabletop one, like he had that in his home, and we played that incessantly. And if I remember correctly, he had Puckman, not Pac-Man. He
Nice.
had a Puckman tabletop.
Now, if I could
And,
find a Donkey Kong one of that, I would be in heaven.
oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we used to play that nonstop when we were kids. So like Pac-Man was probably one of my most played games in my childhood,
Hmm. I mean,
especially
it
when.
was up there. It was up there for me. Maybe top 10, but
Mhm.
definitely not top five. But like I said, Pac-Man was the Tetris of its time.
Yes, it was.
I think that's a good way to put it because it was something. Hey, have a quick 5 minutes, 10 minutes to kill, and you just go on play it,
Yep.
and whatnot. And it was like I said, my mom played it all the time. You can understand, being that we both have stereotypical Brooklyn Italian mothers,
Hmm.
kick us off the console though so that they can play it.
Yep. Yeah, and my both of my parents actually they loved Pac-Man, they loved Tetris, and they loved Asteroids, just to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
through their
yeah. My
list.
mom was definitely Pac-Man and Tetris.
Nice. Yeah, and I can say easily that Pac-Man, Tetris, and probably Mario were in my top 10. They could very well be easily in my top five
Hmm.
for games I played in the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the point you made, Pac-Man was just easy to jump into and leave. So it was perfect. It's like game lasts, played 5 to 10 minutes, off you go.
yeah.
Um, so so going back to the early 80s with the release, right? Still have a little bit more because of the success of Pac-Man, it kind of began what they were calling like the maze craze. And all these maze games just started churning out,
And that's
right?
right up your alley because you're the puzzle person.
And I'm a huge puzzle person. So, so it was cool to see like this genre just completely blow up, right? But the clones that came out were absolutely insane. Right at the release of Pac-Man, we're talking like the earliest clones.
Mhm.
Every company was trying to get in on it. Apple II created a game called Taxman. Atari 8-bit came out with a game called Jawbreaker. Scarfman on the TRS-80.
I
Case,
remember Jawbreaker.
you remember Jawbreaker?
Yeah.
I don't remember Jawbreaker. I remember Taxman. And then I remember the story for this other game called KC Munchkin, which was released on the Odyssey 2. And they actually got sued for releasing the game because it was essentially just Pac-Man.
Hmm.
And they actually lost the suit, and Philips was with the company who created it, had to remove the game from the shelves. They actually had to pull all the games because they had violated copyright issues. And then as time went on, there were other clones that came out. There's actually you can go online and there's a Wikipedia page listing all the clones that came out of Pac-Man. Lock and Chase was considered a clone because again, anything with that maze type, Lock and Chase. There was a game called Mighty Mouth, created by A1 Machines, that again was identical to Pac-Man. They got sued and lost. There was a game that came out in 1981 called Piranha, where you were the piranha, and the ghosts were squid. So just literally a clone.
Yeah.
Another game by TIC in 1981 called The Hand, where you were a hand, and then the ghosts were replaced by hands that were mimicking rock, paper, scissors that were coming after you. And then another game called Thief, where you are also came out in 1981. Character was a thief in a getaway vehicle, and then the police officers were the ghosts. So they were driving around and you were
Yeah.
running. And then again, there are so many games on here. Jawbreaker you had brought up. But also they got sued for that game. Sierra Online got sued for that game. But the list goes on and on and on from 1981 all the way to the 2000s. All
Yeah.
these games that came out, and all of them have crazy. Some of them have crazy names like Gobbleman or Jelly Monsters or Snoggle, um, Ghost Hunt, Hungry Horus on the ZX Spectrum.
And and by the time you get to the end of it, you're not even trying.
No, how about Munchie Man or
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Like, yeah.
wait. The Gobbling Box.
Phrasing.
Just a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Monster Muncher.
Hmm.
Or the one that I thought that really didn't try. Wait, where did I just see it? I think it was like it was called Tac Pack. It's like just yeah. So you can go through this entire list, but again, but it just goes to show you when a game is insanely successful, everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon. Everybody's going to try and come out with an equivalent so that they can just get in on the money making machine.
Yep, that's exactly what the 80s were all about.
Yep. And Pac-Man was, a de facto money-making machine over the course of the franchise. We talked about how much money it made earlier. Over 45 years, the franchise, just the Pac-Man franchise itself, has had over 40 different games, including one coming out July 18th of this year,
Oh,
which is going to be a complete spin on the Pac-Man franchise because I didn't realize this. But did you watch the Amazon series Secret Level?
uh, was that the six-parter about the video?
No, Secret Level it's a series of shorts, and each episode focuses on a different video game.
No, I've never heard of it.
Really good. It came out January, I think it was January this year or late last year. I forgot when it came out. But we actually Rich and I did, I think it was episode 401, where we actually
Mhm.
talked about the episodes.
Yeah,
There's an episode in there.
yeah, my brain doesn't brain anymore and
That's
forgets a lot
fine.
of things.
There's an episode in Secret Level called Pac-Man Circle. It's Pac-Man specific.
Mhm.
And you're going through it as a human. Like there's a human going through this like desolate world.
Mhm.
And he's got this little orb next to him. And this yellow orb is called Puck, representing Pac-Man, right?
Pac-Man, yeah.
Yeah, representing Pac-Man. And it turns out the spin in the episode is really, really cool because he's actually the villain in the episode. So you have to watch it. It's very, very interesting.
Okay.
And the reason why I bring this up, I had no idea that this episode was a prequel to the game coming out July 18th that is called Shadow Labyrinth. And it's about a swordsman being guided through a maze by an orb next to you called Puck.
Mhm.
So that that immediately is going on my list of games that I'm interested in. I'm curious to see how that turns out. Shadow Labyrinth. But that's the latest game that came out. So from 1980 to 2025. So it's one of the longest running video game franchises in history. I don't know how many franchises overshadow it. I know that um uh is it Asteroids or Space Invaders is currently the longest running
I think
in
asteroids. I
history.
can let me take a look. Since
I can't remember because I remember doing a retro record on it last year, but it's one of those two. I think
asteroids was 1979.
yeah. And then Space Invaders. But when I say
Space Invaders was 78.
yeah, Space Invaders was 78, but with the longest running franchise and how they rate that is that the franchise has to come out with a game within 10 years. So in other words,
Mhm.
like whichever one of those has come out with a game within the last 10 years is the longest running.
That's a tough one because I know Asteroid and Space Invaders both had releases for the Game Boy Advance because naturally I have both of them, and the Space
Mhm.
Invaders one was phenomenal.
Really?
Yeah,
All right, cool. So yeah, so 45 years, 40 plus games. And then of course we talked about a little bit of this, but the pop culture legacy. Pac-Man Fever you brought up, the song
yes,
Pac-Man, the album Pac-Man
yes. It was a
Fever.
record, and there was also the Saturday morning cartoon show.
Yeah, but before we get to the cartoon,
Yeah,
Pac-Man Fever came out in 1982. It went to number 9 on the Billboard 100 charts, and it achieved a gold record. It sold over 1 million copies in the US, which is insane when you
kids, you
think
have
about
no
that.
idea what the 80s were like.
No, oh no, the no, the
Besides
80s
a
were.
lot of cocaine.
We'll leave that there.
Yeah.
And when I say we'll leave that there, we'll leave it in the 80s.
Yes.
But yes, so and then you're talking about the television show, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. It
Yes.
ran for 2 seasons. Do you remember? I had, when I looked up the cartoon, I had completely forgotten Pac-Man's wife's name.
It wasn't Mrs. Pac-Man.
It was obviously based off Ms. Pac-Man,
Yeah.
but she actually had a first name, which
Oh,
surprised me because you never hear about that name
no,
anywhere
I
else.
don't know.
Her name was Pepper Pac-Man.
Peter Piper picked a peck of
Yeah,
perfect Pac-Man.
yeah, there
Okay,
you
that
go.
works.
Right? Try, yeah, say that 10 times
Yeah.
fast. And then of course they had their baby, Pac Baby.
Of course.
So, not to be confused with the video game, right? Baby Pac-Man,
Yes.
which was a
Or Ms.
hybrid.
Pac-Man.
No, no, right. We had Miss Pac-Man, but Baby Pac-Man was a hybrid video game pinball machine,
Hmm.
which you can play at Silver Ball Retro Arcade.
Oh.
They do have one.
Oh.
One of my favorite Pac-Man appearances on television was on the show Friends. I don't know if you were a fan of the show Friends.
Nah, I wasn't a Friends person.
Okay, huge Friends fan. One of my favorite sitcoms of all time. And there's an episode of Friends where for Chandler and Monica's wedding gift, Phoebe gets them a Pac-Man arcade machine.
Nice.
But she loves it so much she won't leave the apartment or let anybody else play it. So she's just sitting there playing it. And then one day, she goes to work or whatever it was, and Chandler takes over. And then he's playing the game and he beats all the high scores and he puts his name on all the high scores, but he puts dirty initials on each of the high scores. And then Monica's nephew was coming over to play. So they were trying to erase all the scores. And Phoebe gets back on the game because she's a better player. And as her nephew Ben is coming in, Phoebe loses and she starts cursing up a storm right in front of the kid. It's such a great episode, but it literally centered the whole episode centers around a
But
Pac-Man
you know,
arcade, which is awesome.
but that's what it was like in the arcades. I mean, not as dramatic because, made for TV. But yeah,
Hmm.
arcades would have to get multiple Pac-Man machines because the lines were so long and people would want to keep playing it over and over again and try to beat the high score. And you have your high score that you beat
Hmm. Yeah, and you and
on Miss for Ms. Pac-Man.
oh yeah, and I'm sure I still have that high score.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the whole thing was like you were like you were like famous in that arcade.
Yeah.
If you had the high score and your initials were sitting there, you were like a little mini celebrity when you went into that arcade. And you remember like everybody like you just the lines that would show up, put your quarter down because you're next. You put
Yeah.
your quarter right down on the screen. It's like my turn next. Everybody did that. But again, television, I'm sure Pac-Man has shown up in numerous other places.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that immediately came to mind for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Pac-Man has gone beyond television, of course, if we talk about film. The ones immediately that come to mind in my head are Pixels, if you've seen Pixels.
Yes.
There's Giant
The
Pac-Man.
giant Pac-Man.
Yep, and Toru Itami also shows up in the movie. I think he plays like a mechanic or maybe an arcade technician early in the film.
Mm.
And then Wreck-It Ralph and the sequel Ralph Breaks the Internet. I think the ghosts. I don't know if Pac-Man shows up. The ghosts were definitely there. I remember them in the
Yeah,
in the
Wreck-It
film.
Ralph was a great movie.
It really was. It was a lot of fun. And then Ready Player One, the book. If you've
The
ever read
book
the
is,
book,
I
book is
mean, the
fantastic.
book Ready Player One is so phenomenal.
Hmm.
Player Two, not as good.
Not
But
as good, but it's
if
still
you like, if you really want to know what the '80s were like, you got to read Ready Player One. That was one of those books that I could not put down,
same,
and
same.
I have a hard time reading fiction books.
Yeah. I have an easier time reading fiction, growing up on Stephen King, but Ready Player One to me I thought was absolutely excellent. Player Two, I agree, not as strong, but
Yeah.
I thought it was still good enough to get through.
I do
His
need to get a Dork Slayer.
uh, Dork Slayer I don't have.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but again, just permeating fiction. Um, Pac-Man will always, and again, you mentioned it earlier. World Video Game Hall of Fame, first year inductee in
Yep.
2015. It was a
Rightfully so.
no-brainer. Also holds or held 8 Guinness World Record titles throughout, the 45 years of the franchise. And one of those titles was one of them listed as the most recognized video game character in the world. At one point, Pac-Man was the most recognized video game character in the
I
world.
mean, it makes sense. I mean, look at the reach.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is beyond like this is total global domination here.
And it's
But
still and it's still popular even today, whether it be us old farts playing it or introducing it to the younger generation, where we're introducing it to our kids, and in some cases, not in our case, grandkids. And they fall in love with it. Mary likes playing loved playing Pac-Man 99 on the Switch.
mhm,
I played it a few times also. It's just one of those things, when it comes to some of the video games, especially the retro ones, they were simple.
mhm.
And here's what you have to do. It's quick and whatnot. And I think that's one of the things that gave it its allure, because as we were saying, it's one of those things where you can just sit down. Hey, I got 5-10 minutes. I need to chill out, and poof, you're playing it for a little bit. So that's one of the reasons why I would think that Pac-Man has kept its popularity and it's still going.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. Again, simple game for a simpler time when the video game industry was young, but at the same
Yeah,
time, it has a very addictive nature to it,
it does.
and it's just very approachable. Anybody from 8 to 80 can play a Pac-Man game. It's not rocket science. You don't have to learn like every level. You don't have to
Yeah,
learn, oh, I got to do something different, or I have to like go grab these
yeah.
things and do all these. It's like, nope, it's the
It's simple
same
gameplay: up, down, left, right.
up, down, left, right, collect your stuff and move on to the next board. Very,
Yeah,
very straightforward. And yeah, and I agree. I go, it's a recipe for success. It's something that, like, if I were to give it an equivalent to games today, it would be like a Candy Crush for people,
yes,
where you're just the levels. Granted, in Candy Crush, the levels do change and you learn
yeah.
different things. But again, it's the basic mentality of here, I'm going to put this thing in order and move on to the next. Pac-Man, very, very simple, very effective. Um, and again, there are so many, and there have been so many games that have come out, and for the majority of it, it's still always the same goal, right? Most of the Pac-Man games that have come out, whether Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man,
Yeah.
all the way to Pac-Man Championship Edition, Pac-Man 99, you're still doing the same thing. They've just found a way to give it enough of a twist to
Hmm.
make it different.
Yeah. And there's also the different variations. I mean, we could talk about the Nintendo version that even brought in its what's the word? I don't know if Horizon is the word, but it exposed a lot more people to it. And the
Mhm.
Nintendo version had phenomenal graphics.
Yep.
As we were both talking about before, our parents, would kick us off the console to play it on the NES. I think there was a Super Pac-Man on the Super Nintendo, correct?
Um, I think so. I think it did
Okay.
come out on
And
there.
as I mentioned, the Game Boy Advance, you had the Pac-Man collection, which was the
Yeah.
original board, a couple of variations, and there was a 3D board where you can actually bounce over the barriers.
Yep. Pac-Mania. Pac-Mania introduced the whole jumping aspect where you can jump over ghosts. It had a very weird isometric view to it.
Yes, there was Pac in Time for the Super Nintendo. There
Pac
was
in
Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures. Uh,
Pac in Time, I think Pac in Time was a platformer though.
yeah.
It wasn't maze related. One of the ones that I played it on my stream a few weeks ago, but one of the ones that I always seem to enjoy a lot is Pac-Man Arrangement Edition.
Hmm.
It's such a weird version of the game. It's got it's got a 2D slash 3D. It's kind of like an in-between kind of board, but then the
Hmm.
pellets on the board are always moving. It, it's
That sounds fun.
it's very strange. The boards are, yeah, it's like very strange, very colorful. It's still got the maze mentality with the ghost coming at you. And then at a certain point in the game, um, you fight, you actually do a board against the ghost, but the ghost is like super big. And you
Hmm.
have to eat a power pellet to break him into a whole bunch of different ghosts and then eat them all up. I thought it was just, again, a clever
It sounds very
variation.
trippy.
It's very trippy. It's very, very trippy, but a great variation to the game that
Hmm.
I just can't seem to put down when I play it, and it's just a lot of fun. There was also Pac-Man, Pac-Moto S, where you were always in the ball and you were going through 3D screens, 3D levels. Again, so many different ways to play Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Again, some more adventure like some more for a gamer. Like I said, like with the side scroll adventures, like your Pac in Time, Pac-Land in the 80s when it came out was a side scrolling game. It wasn't your traditional one. And then they had stuff like Professor Pac-Man in the early 80s where it was just basically an educational game.
Yeah. So, boys and girls, basically, you see how Disney's like expanding Marvel to do everything and whatnot and come up with ridiculous things. That was the 80s,
That literally was
especially
the
with
80s.
Pac-Man.
Yeah, like if some character like just was a big hit, it was like,
Poof.
yeah, poof. How do we drag it into everything? I didn't even touch on I forgot to even touch on like with the pop culture merchandise.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I was like
Merchandising, merchandising. I mean, look behind you.
merchandising. Yeah, right behind me you see my Pac-Man cereal that
Yeah.
came out a few
I
years ago.
remember having one of the little wind up walking Pac-Mans.
Yeah, the one that I remember buying this getting the cereal as a kid and eating it and
I remember that also.
having
And
my
the
sugar
difference between
rushes.
Pac-Man and a lot of other things, Pac-Man hasn't died out.
No.
You'll get a lot of things, they'll have their moment of phase, like the Tamagotchis, and
Mm-mm.
then poof, it kind of goes on the wayside. Pac-Man has not.
No.
And it goes back to the playability. It's a quickie.
Yeah. Again, it's a quick game, but it's also a very addicting game.
Yeah.
I defy anybody who plays it to just play one round and walk away.
Yeah.
You're always
And
gonna.
it does exercise your brain.
No, it really does. It's it's a spatial awareness, it's hand-eye
Mhm.
coordination, but that's what a lot of it, a lot of video games achieve, that's the
Yeah.
whole achievement with that. Going back to merchandising really quickly. In 1982, uh, Namco had over 100 licensees creating different products. And in the US alone, there was $1 billion in merchandise sales just in 1982 alone. I don't have stats for like total overall sales, but just the idea of like, imagine $1 billion in 1982. That is
Yeah.
insane. Absolutely insane to think about.
Yeah.
And obviously, over the 45 years, we've had everything from phones to board games. There's been coffee, Pac-Man coffee recently.
I think there was candy also,
There was Pac-Man candy. Lego, a couple of years
of
ago,
course.
created the Pac-Man machine that you put together, which I never bought and I should. Arcade One Up
Yeah, the little
has made
desktop one.
no, Arcade One Up is the
Oh,
actual the arcade cabinets, like the Miss Pac-Man and
okay.
Larry has. Like the arcade cabinets that you can have in your home.
I need to
And
get one
they've
of those for Donkey Kong.
yeah, and they've made several versions of that. I don't know if did they do a Donkey Kong one?
Yeah, because like one of my ultimate life goals is to have a Donkey Kong arcade machine in my house.
Yeah, I don't blame you. They're amazing machines. I would love to just have an actual original arcade in my house. Right now, all I have is my Arcade One Up X-Men arcade
Uh,
machine, and I'm very, very happy with it. But I would love to
and that
have
would
a
have to be like the original Donkey Kong with the four boards instead of three.
okay. I think that's a good one to have.
Yeah.
Mine there are very few arcades that I really want to own. WrestleFest was always on the top of my list
Mhm.
because I loved WrestleFest, and you could not get that on your console. That they never released it on console. The other one was the Twilight Zone pinball machine. It's the only
Nice.
pinball machine that I love. I'm terrible at pinball, but I
They have
love
it. Do
that.
they have it down at Silver Ball?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
And I played and I played terribly and I was fine with it. But yeah, those are always the arcades that I think of. But let me tell you something. I would love a Ms. Pac-Man machine, like OG Ms. Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Would love to have in my house. Would be fantastic. But yeah, I mean, that is essentially the history of Pac-Man. 45 years of Pac-Man summed up in, a little under an hour.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many, I mean, I don't know what else can you say about it, Charlie?
I mean, there really is. I mean, we hit all of it. It started out. It created the phase. You were able to bring it home. You had the pop culture references and everything. Merchandising, 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 and it's still a strong player today. So, it definitely rightfully deserved to be the one of the initial inductees into the Video Game Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, there's still another. You said there was a version coming out
Yeah,
in July, correct?
yeah, Shadow Labyrinth.
So,
And it's another spin on Pac-Man because you're going to be controlling a 3D human character now in
mhm.
the Pac-Man world. So I'm really curious to see how that works. I do recommend go watch Secret Level and look at Pac-Man Circle. Just it's
Mhm.
all the episodes are all actually the whole
I would
series.
love to see them put Pac-Man out as one of the Game and Watches. I think that would be a hit.
Oh, that would be really cool. Like a new Game and Watch version.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening, if they go that route. But yes, but a very, very special 45th retro birthday to Pac-Man. If there was any video game franchise that deserved its own episode, it's this one.
Yes.
There's
And
no
the cake
question
would
about
be
it.
easy to make also because you'd be missing the mouthpiece of it.
Yeah, you just make a cake and you take off a slice.
Yeah, I
It's
could
like,
probably do that. I make good cakes.
yeah. Well, you know what? Whenever you want to bring a cake to a friend's house, make a yellow cake and
Yeah.
then save a slice for yourself at home. And when they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
wait a minute, you already told I made you
It's
a
a Pac-Man
Pac-Man
cake.
cake. It's a Pac-Man cake."
Yellow food dye. That works.
Yeah, don't worry about the missing piece. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we're gonna steer this one down. Charlie, this it this has been an absolute blast to talk about Pac-Man with you and just in general to have you back on the show. It's been too long. Please promise me you'll come back again soon.
Oh, I'm coming back for Super Mario 40. There is no, I mean, if I have to drive all the way up to you and crash the damn set, I will.
Okay, you know what? The set will be here if you want to crash it, but you won't have to do that. We can do it virtually. It'll be just
Yeah.
as fun.
No, but
But
well, what's up next? That or the retro video game?
the
The
Retro
expo
Video Game
first?
Expo in Long Island will happen first because
Okay.
Super Mario's 40th is in September.
Okay. So yeah. So
September 13th, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But it's somewhere around that time, the 40th for Super Mario Brothers.
and so what's your
But
favorite iteration what's your favorite iteration of Pac-Man?
my favorite iteration of Pac-Man, I mean, I gotta go with Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man to me, like I feel like they took what Pac-Man did and they added just enough to make it so that much stronger.
Hmm.
So I was really happy with Miss Pac-Man. Although we didn't talk about this during the story. When Miss Pac-Man was originally being designed, it was actually being designed as Crazy Otto. You remember? I don't know if you remember that, but it was originally Crazy Otto. That was what it was going to be called, and then they changed. Then they decided to make it Ms. Pac-Man.
Mm.
So um, I thought that was interesting too. But yeah, Miss Pac-Man would be mine. What about you?
Um, I'd have to go with the Pac-Man collection on the Advance
Okay,
because you could play all the different variations in one spot.
I think I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I could say Pac-Man Museum for the same reason. I'm like, but if I had to sit down, but if you had to sit down and just play one version of Pac-Man,
The original arcade
original arcade,
on
and you know what?
on the arcade machine, not the Nintendo.
Nope. I, oh, you know what? I agree with you there. Like if I had to play Pac-Man, like if you gave me a choice to play Pac-Man, I want the arcade.
Yeah,
There is some, it's funny though, how there are some games where it does not matter what console it comes out on, you still want to go to that arcade. Pac
Pac-Man, Donkey
Pac-Man.
Kong in my case.
I no, I agree. Donkey
Yeah,
Kong too. I agree. It's only meant for the arcade.
yeah. Well, maybe asteroids a little bit. Space Invaders.
Space Invaders, I agree. Asteroids, I grew up with on my Atari, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but Pac-Man, I agree 100%. Miss Pac-Man, same thing. It's like
Mm.
give me the arcade one, not the console version.
Yeah.
But yeah. But Charlie, again, thank you so much for being on the show this week. I really appreciate it. And for those of you out there, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Always very important and continue to support us. We really appreciate it. And you can find us on Facebook.com/Retro Gamers Podcast, on Instagram and Blue Sky at Retro Gamers Podcast. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube and Spotify at Retro Gamers Podcast, or you can email if you want to chat with us, email at theretrogamers.com. And with that, Charlie, I wish you a very wonderful summer. I hope
You
you get
too,
out
my
there and get some
friend. And I
sunshine.
look
Enjoy it.
forward to our annual trip to the Retro Gaming Expo.
Yep, I will see you in August in Long Island.
Damn well better.
And for the rest of you out there, we will see you next time on the Retro Gamers Podcast.